Hello everyone! Today we are painting a Christmas wreath. So if you are a beginner, this may be helpful because we are going to talk about how to get balance all the way around your wreath without it being too left-right matchy-matchy. There are many different types of wreaths, but we're specifically talking about the ones that have foliage all the way around them. If you're new here, my name is Teresa. I'm a surface pattern designer and watercolor artist. And before we get started, I just have to tell you about a couple of very exciting things that have happened lately. First, this is my 50th long-form tutorial on YouTube. That means there are 50 videos now for you to explore. Also, I want to say thank you to the people who have been following me. Because of you, I am now eligible for monetization. So that's because of you, and I really appreciate that. Also, I have a lot of new followers lately. So December is kind of a high watch time for a lot of people. Of course, it's Christmas, but not only have people found their way to me, but a lot of people have subscribed. So I just can't tell you, I never imagined that I would have so many followers. So thank you so much. I appreciate every single one of you. Okay, let's get to work on our wreath. There are three basic things that can make or break your wreath: color, texture, and composition. It's best to use colors that are different from each other. So today we're going to use a sap green, sap plus cerulean blue, hooker's green, and perylene green. Then I may use a little bit of deep sap. Then our little berries are going to be a mixture of Windsor red and permanent rose. And then some of the little stems and stuff, I will use a combination of Van Dyke brown and sepia. Now, the only three strokes we're really going to use for our textures are going to be very simple. The first one is going to be our basic leaf, where I'm using a size 10 silver black velvet brush, and we'll just use the tip to come out, press down, and pick back up. And this is the same leaf that I use over and over. If you've seen my other videos, you know this leaf. So you can't mess this up, you just, in any direction. So we will do a variety of those. And then I'm going to take my grabby number 2, and we're going to do the other very basic evergreen, where we just do these little hash marks. So that's all we're doing for that one. So those are very nice contrasting textures. This one's more wide and smooth, and this is very small and kind of streaky. And then we'll of course do berries, which are just round. So for composition, I am going to divide this circle into 3 sections to make it easy. One right here, one over here, and one down here. Now by doing that, it's going to add a balance to our circle very easily. Now, we could just start in one point and go all the way around, but I just find it easier if you're struggling with balance to pick one element to paint first and then do that in 3 spots. So first, we're going to take any one of our first 3 greens and just make a leaf. And then I want to pick up a different green and do another leaf. And we're just going to use those first 3 for our leaves. So now I'm going to add the darker one. And they can touch and bleed into each other if you want. That's a nice look. And don't worry too much about if they're too light or not. I tend to go a little lighter to begin with because we can always go back over some of them if we want. And there's no rhyme or reason as to what position you put them in. Just be free with it. Whatever you feel like doing. And we're only going to do a little piece of this. So I'll only do a few leaves, and then I'm going to skip a space and start on the second one. And I like doing 3s because if you do 2s, then your circle can start looking to mirror image. And sometimes, depending on the style of your wreath, that's just fine. But for the wreath that I want to do, I don't want it to be a mirror image. So I'm just picking different, kind of alternating these greens. And I'll do another strip of these leaves about the same length as the first one that we did. But it doesn't matter if it's a little longer or not. And I don't want to do it exactly the same, again, because I don't want that mirror image kind of thing going on. And then the third one, I'll put right up here. And you can, if you watched the video on the leaves and perspective, you want to think about that right here. You want your leaves bending in different directions, just to give it some variety and to look more natural. And it's okay if the spaces that are left between these two are not equal. That's no problem at all. In fact, I kind of like that. Again, because I want balance, but I don't want matchy-matchy. And another good tip is to turn your wreath around. So I decided that I wanted one more leaf right there. And we may add more leaves as we go along. I just like to just let it develop as I go. But if you turn your wreath around as you're working on it, that will help you to see holes where you may need to alter what you're doing a little bit. Otherwise, you could end up with kind of a flat spot or something like that. And this way you can make sure that no matter which way your wreath is turned, it's going to look good. And it's easier to keep from putting your hand in wet paint as well, which I'm really bad about that. And now I'm taking that little detail brush and I'm just going to put a few of these evergreen stems in here. So I'm going with very little thin strokes, and that will be a nice contrasting texture to the first leaves that we did. And I'm going to do them in different directions, of course, just for some variety. And we'll come back with the brown in a moment and add the branch part of it. Right now I'm only using sap green, but I'm allowing my consistency to vary a little bit. I first started out, it was pretty watery, and now I'm using it a little thicker. I would say more of a cream type consistency, and that's making it appear a little bit darker. There was just a little bit of olive green in my palette, and so that has gotten in my sap mixture. So if this is looking a little yellowy to you, that's why. And that's another thing. So as this is developing, we can decide where do we want our darks, because that's another thing that can really throw any composition off, is if you have all the same tones. If you have all medium tones, it's really going to look bland. So I started out fairly light with that cerulean blue mixture. And then the sap green is a little bit darker. Not necessarily darker, it's just a different green. And then that other one, the perylene mixture, is a deeper green. So I'm trying to really vary those tones. And this evergreen, I thought I was going to leave it a lighter sap green, but now the more I'm seeing it, I think I want it darker. So I'm adding the brown branch right now to each of them, which that will darken it up a little bit. And there's a blank spot right here. See, by turning this around, I'm starting to see where we need more filler. So I think I'm going to put a little of that deep sap in here now, just to give it some richness. And I'm thinking about that flat spot over there, thinking about, okay, what do I want to put there? I could put another evergreen branch, or I could leave that spot for berries, because we're going to add some berries. So I don't know, I'll just keep working and I'll think about it for a few minutes. So I told the story last week about skiing in Alaska late at night, and somebody made a comment about it. And so then that started me thinking, you know, I really should have expanded on that a little bit last week, but it's kind of hard to talk and tell a story while you're painting because, you know, like right now I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? And it's kind of hard to talk about other things while I'm thinking about what I'm painting, and I want to be sure to tell you everything that you might need to know while you're painting this. But anyway, just to kind of close out that story, I thought I might clarify that my husband and I were very young. We were in our 20s and very inexperienced with living around bears. And so not that, you know, if you're young in your 20s, that doesn't mean that you're as naive as we are, or we were. But we were very naive about living around bears, and we were trying to learn from our new friends about what to do and what not to do. See, I decided to put a few more leaves in that little spot. That looks better. But, you know, and I know I thought that bears hibernate in the winter and they never wake up during their hibernation, but that's not true. They do wake up during the winter and come out of their dens, but I really thought, no, we were safe. We didn't have to worry about bears. But luckily we never came across a bear when we were cross-country skiing. Only moose, and I do have some stories about some wolves, but you know, and that's the other thing. We didn't realize that, you know, just because we lived right on the outskirts of Anchorage, we thought that wolves would not be an issue either, and that's not true. No, we learned that, so I'll save that story for another time. But I just did want to clear that up, that we would never do that now. We would never go skiing that late at night. But because we did live so close to the city, it was never really dark. Not dark like you would think it would be at midnight. The light really from the city would reflect from the cloud cover against the snow and back and forth. And so that was really more of it was an interesting light. But I never really felt like we were in the dark when we were out skiing at midnight. But just so you know, I would never do that today. That was not the smartest of moves. So if you didn't watch last week, you should go check that out and you can hear that story. I'll put the link to that video up above. See, as I'm working around this wreath, I'm finding more and more spots that really need to be filled. And I'm sorry if my voice is a little scratchy. I don't know why it's kind of scratchy, but it's sounding kind of strange to me now that I'm filming. And now I'm just looking. Do I want to add more leaves? While I was talking, you may have noticed I added a little more color to some of the leaves, made them a little darker. And now I'm just going to start filling in berries. And I don't have any plan. I know I want a good number of berries. So just place them wherever you feel is right. I love using berries. They're a great filler. And they add that little pop. Now, of course, a wreath can have a number of compositions. You could do the berries all in one cluster if you wanted to, or if you wanted to add a flower and have berries coming out from either side of that flower, that would be really neat. The only thing I've ever found that wreaths can cause a problem with in composition is getting it either too thin in one spot or getting it too heavy on one area and too light on another area, or if your colors are all the same, if they're all mid-tones, for instance, then it can look very bland and lifeless. You can even do a partial wreath where all of your leaves and stuff are like at the bottom center and they come up and around, but then there's nothing at the top. I mean, you know, it's the possibilities are limitless, and they're fun to paint because every time I paint a wreath, it turns out differently. I've painted this particular wreath 3 times in just thinking about what I wanted the composition to be like for this video, and all 3 of them are a little bit different, mainly because of the berries, because the berries end up in different spots, and that really changes the look. Or on a couple of them, I would have one leaf that was really sticking out and looked kind of lonely by itself. And then I had one wreath where all the leaves were too compact, and it was a very smooth wreath all the way around, and it did not look natural at all because I didn't have any leaves sticking out toward the center or on the outside. So that's something to think about too. You know, all my leaves looked like they were all going in the same direction, right next to each other, and it almost looked like a cookie cutter. Very smooth donut, and it just looked weird. I like to have all my leaves going in the same direction. If you noticed, I started, you know, kind of in that upper left-hand corner, and all the leaves are going around the wreath in a counterclockwise direction. Now, you could do it so that half of the wreath is going counterclockwise and the other half is going clockwise. It just depends on your elements in your wreath as to whether that's going to look good or not. So that's one of the things you want to think about. Do you want everything to be going in the same direction? Which for this one, I really did. I thought it would be too distracting to have it partly going one way and partly going another way. But see, this wreath was very, very easy. We really only used 3 strokes for this whole wreath. And I'm just adding the stems for the berries, and I'm placing some of the stems so that they're going behind the leaves, and some of the stems so that they're going over the top of the leaves. I just think that adds a little bit of dimension to it. And now that I have turned this wreath so many times around and around, now I'm kind of forgetting, you know, which way did I have it as the top and the bottom to begin with. So that's the other good thing. Then you can, when you're finished, you can spin it around and figure out, okay, which way do you want the top to be? And then I decided I love it like this, but I'm really in a snow mood right now. I wish it would snow. I miss having white Christmases. So I think I'm going to put some little snow sprinkles on this and see what that looks like. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking there's a little hole right there. I'm trying to decide here which way do I want to be top and bottom. See, it works always. It really doesn't matter. Except that I need to make these a little bit longer just to add a little fluffiness. It's right there. That's better. Okay, now I'm going to add the snow and hope that the paint I just added will dry quickly so it doesn't bleed into the white. And remember to change the angle of your brush every once in a while so that all your splatters aren't going in the same direction. Or you could turn the wreath around again. And this is very messy. I like the way that looks. I'm glad I did this. I think that's really adding a neat element. Okay, I think I like that. Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, please give me a thumbs up to let me know. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. I have a lot more great, fun watercolor videos coming up real soon. Thanks so much, and hope to see you next week.